Chapter 8. Nate came to the library again to walk Aalliyah back to his house. He seemed very energetic and excited for something, but he gave no indication as to why. Back at the house, she saw a large box and 2 totes sitting next to it in the living room. There was a fake bear Christmas tree perched. Nate grinned and kissed her cheek and said, "I hope after dinner you can help Jeramie and I decorate it." "I would love to," she chimed. "We also want you to spend Christmas with us this year. Are there any traditions your family honored you'd want us to engage in?" "Just the typical ones." "Okay, we know this year is going to be really hard on you without Aalliyah and Henry, so Jeramie and I promise to make it as special as we possibly can." The 3 of them decorated the tree 1 ornament at a time. Then they let Aalliyah put the angel on the top and plugged in the tree. The colors danced around the room and the magic filled their hearts. Christmas Day came, and Nate had a surprise up his sleeve to make it special for Aalliyah. He only hoped it would be appreciated and not too much for her. Once she arrived, she gathered with Nate and Jeramie by the fire. Just then a knock came from the door. Nate happily hurried over to get it, and he welcomed the 2 guests in. "Aalliyah!" cried Lisa, running over to hug her daughter. Aalliyah turned astonished to see her birth parents there. "Hope you don't mind. Nate asked us to join in on the fun this holiday." "Not at all," she said softly and trembling. Lisa glanced at James, not sure if Aalliyah was telling the truth or if their presence was bothering her. She saw the question in their eyes and quickly added, "Truly, I miss my adoptive parents, but I am very grateful to have you both here. It's just really hard for me to be without them. The wound in my heart is still bleeding, and I still think about it all the time that passes." Silence fell over the room, so Nate cut in. "Jeramie, you need to get us started with your tradition." He nodded and walked over to the window. He placed 1 candle in the window and lit the match, and then the wick. Then he went to the other window and placed another candle and lit it. He glanced over at Nate and Aalliyah and declared, "This year, I'll be adding 2 more. Nate offered, "Don't forget to explain this tradition to Aalliyah." "I know. Aalliyah, would you like to help me place and light the next 2? "Sure," she answered. "Do you want me to do one and Nate to do the other?" Jeramie shook his head. "No, it has to be you." Aalliyah met Nate's eyes and he nodded. Realizing it had to be part of the tradition that he didn't tell her yet, she took the first candle in her hand and lit it, setting it a bit away from the other on the window. Then they went back to the first window and she placed the other. Finally, Jeramie explained, "When I was little, my parents always had a candle in the window, and it seemed to bring out the energy of the room. I made sure to continue that tradition, but I added the reason to honor them and remember them. We added the 2 this year to represent your parents." He saw her about to break into tears and whispered, "Stay strong." He held out his hands and requested, "Give me your hands." She placed her hands on top of his, and he wrapped his fingers around her hands. "Now close your eyes and take a moment to reflect back on the wonderful memories of the past with your family." Jeramie closed his eyes too and recalled his childhood. He felt Aalliyah shaking and her breathing became jagged. Without opening his eyes, he knew she was either fighting tears or crying. Her grasp on him tightened and he felt her pain. Tighter yet she gripped. Finally, Jeramie opened his eyes and saw rivers pouring down her delicate face. "Aalliyah," he whispered, and she opened her eyes. Then she realized how tight she had dug her fingers into his hand and that she had made both of their hands turn red. "I'm so sorry," she claimed softly, throwing her arms around him. "Don't be. You are in a lot of pain," he responded lightly, rubbing her back. "I miss them." "I know you do. Does it ever get better?" "Not exactly. The pain never goes away. You just get used to it. But you know what helps is love from others, and I know someone who loves to shower you in love all hours of a day." Aalliyah turned her head and saw her boyfriend eagerly gazing at her, waiting patiently for her. Aalliyah forced a faint smile. "Shall we join the others by the fire?" She nodded and staggered over to Nate. He held out his arms, and she crawled up on the chair with him. He curled his arms around her, and she leaned into his chest, crying. Many minutes went by, and no one spoke or moved, knowing she needed that time to just be comforted. After a while, she managed to rein in her tears and get them under control. Taking several deep breaths, she turned her head away from Nate's chest. Slowly she informed, "My family would sit by the fire, and my mother would start by singing Silent Night. Then we would all sing songs together. I would love if we could do that. I can begin." She rose from the chair and made her way over to the tree where Olivia always started off the tradition. Aalliyah closed her eyes and took a few deep breaths. Finally, she left the first note escape. By the end of the first verse, tears were streaming down her cheeks, but still held her voice steady and completed the song. "Your voice is beautiful," commented Nate. She smiled briefly, but then let it fall. "I'm sorry, I can't do this," she stated and fled to Nate's bedroom. Once again, silence took over the home. Knowing Aalliyah needed some time alone, they let her go. After a while, Lisa decided to check on her daughter. She gently knocked on the bedroom door, but Aalliyah didn't answer, so she opened it and went in. There she saw her daughter lying on the bed, curled in a ball, shaking from tears. Lightly, Lisa laid her hand on Aalliyah's back. "I just came to check on you," she informed. Aalliyah responded, "I appreciate it, but I'm okay. I love that you and Dad came, but all I can think about is my adoptive family. It's too soon for me to celebrate and truly enjoy the season. Please go back out there and celebrate with them and leave me in here. Tell them I'm sorry and that I need more time." "I will," promised Lisa, and retreated to the living room. She shook her head as her way to tell the group Aalliyah wouldn't be coming out of the bedroom anytime soon. When the night fell, Aalliyah saw a bright light glowing from outside. She climbed out of bed and went over to the window. There she saw the Christmas star, shining as bright as ever. "It's a sign of hope," Nate claimed, standing in the doorway of the room. She turned and met his eyes and then shifted her focus back onto the star. He came over and placed his arm around her. "The legend of the Christmas star is that it appears when the world or a person needs its hope the most. It was there for Jeramie the first Christmas without his parents, and it's here for you now, star child." When it came for Jeramie, I told him it was a sign of hope, and everything got better from that point on for him. The star is believed to have magical powers, too. Yes, he was still hurting, but the wound wasn't as deep. Perhaps it will mend your heart. It's almost a new year, a new chance that it has less pain for you. Anyway, I wanted to tell you, Lisa and James are going to return to their hotel if you wanted to say goodbye. They'll be staying in town until the day after New Year's, so you are welcome to spend time with them if you are up for it. With them living in Ireland, I don't get to see them often. I'd love to spend any chance I get this week with them, especially because we never know how long we have or when cherished time will become a treasured memory. Spring came and melted the troubles of the cold winter away. Aalliyah, of course, still hurt from the loss of her adoptive parents, but she could at least function. She knew they wouldn't have wanted her moping around all the time and to go out and enjoy her life. She was doing just that. Right now, she sat in the passenger seat as Nate drove and drove. Aalliyah was super excited because they were going camping, something she had never done in her life. Jeramie was with too and excited to be the one ruling the trip. Nate was in touch with the night with his astronomy, but Jeramie was in touch with all of nature because of his love for herbs. Camping was his territory, and he couldn't wait to share his love for it with Aalliyah. Many hours of driving later, Nate stopped in the car in a campground surrounded by the woods. It was a beautiful remote location. Nate pulled the tent bag out from the trunk. Aalliyah followed his instructions carefully so she could help unfold it and lay it on the ground. Jeramie and Nate did the first pull, and then Jeramie let Aalliyah give it a try. It wasn't too difficult, and soon the tent was up. Nate said, "Jeramie, Aalliyah, go collect firewood. I'm going to build the fire wing." The two headed off into the woods. Jeramie questioned, "Do you know how to find the best type of firewood?" Aalliyah shook her head. "All right, so there's a few things you want to look for. One, when you touch the wood, make sure it feels dry. If it is wet, it won't burn. You want to find varying sizes as well. It's good to have thick logs that will burn longer, but you also want little sticks to act as kindles. We can use this bag to collect kindles. I can carry the larger logs. We may have to take a few trips back and forth." "How much firewood do we need?" she questioned. "It depends how long you want to keep it going. We'll be using it to make dinner tonight and tomorrow as well. We could collect more than enough so we have it for tomorrow, or we could always go out and fetch more tomorrow. I think we should collect the extra now, though. When I collect wood, I usually stray out from the camp a good distance, then I work my way back to collect the pieces." "Why?" "So if we do need more firewood, we need not to go as far." "That's actually really clever." They wandered into the woods until they were about half a mile from the campsite. Aalliyah realized it wasn't too difficult finding kindles for the fire, and she was having no trouble adding to the bag. Jeramie pointed out she should add a bit of dry leaves as well to help catch the twigs on fire in the first place. Then she saw an adequate-sized log that had promise. "I found a fire log," she reported, and started leaning down to pick it up. Jeramie looked in her direction and saw where she was about to put her hand. "Aalliyah, don't!" he warned, but it was too late. "Ow! Feather!" she shrieked as a snake hidden there sank its fangs into her forearm. Jeramie dropped the logs he held and ran over to her. He wrapped his arm around her and pulled her away from the snake before it would bite her again. Once they were several yards away, Jeramie rolled her right arm over to face him. He saw blood running down her arm from where the snake had bit her. The area was also forming a black and blue-like mark. "Hold your arm still," ordered Jeramie. He pulled out a pen from his pocket and circled the bite mark. He glanced at his watch and wrote down on her arm 4:15. "What does that mean?" "I wrote the time you were bitten. I will check it in a few minutes and see how the marks or swelling are progressing. I then will mark that. It is in case you get worse and we need to rush you to an ER. They will see how severe it is. Right now we need to get you back to camp, and I will help you as best as I am able." "Do you know what type of snake it is?" "Yes, an adder, the only venomous snake in all of England." "Could it kill me?" "Not many die from it. Most that die from it aren't killed from the venom and other secondary effects. You are going to be okay. I will make sure of that. If you feel dizzy, tell me immediately." Jeramie trailed near Aalliyah as they briskly walked back to camp. Nate glanced up from building a stone-fit fire pit and saw the way Aalliyah was holding her arm. "What happened?" he demanded. "She got bit by an adder." Jeramie looked at Aalliyah's arm and marked 2 inches past the bite mark and wrote the current time, 4:25. Then he reported, "She will be okay, but she is having a severe reaction to it." Jeramie pulled out a folding chair and indicated for her to sit, and she did. "I'm going to be back in a moment, and then I can tend to her. Please make sure she remains sitting. I'm worried if she gets up she could faint. It's bad enough she is almost wheezing. Don't be too frightened. These are common reactions to the venom." Jeramie opened his emergency bag of herbs and healing tools and thought for a moment how he would do the process. He took 2 spare stakes from the tent bag and tore a piece of tin foil off of the roll. Lastly, he gathered a mallet and bucket. With the selected items, he set off into the woods again, but didn't stray too far. Fortunately, he found a maple tree easily. Carefully, he pierced a hole into the bark of the tree and used the 2 stakes and tinfoil to make a funnel into the bucket. He set the bucket on the hook of the stakes and then let it set to collect maple syrup. Then he returned to the camp and went over to Aalliyah. He poured a bottle of water over the bite mark and took a clean cloth over it. She winced, but then the pain faded. With the blood washed away, he could see how deep the fang had landed. Once again, he marked her arm with the pen. Her arm continued bleeding, so he held a cloth on it. Several minutes he sat not moving. Nate sat on the ground, staring up at them with concern for his girlfriend. After more minutes passed, Jeramie instructed, "Keep holding the cloth on your arm, Aalliyah. I will be right back." He removed his hand, and she replaced it with hers. She watched as he walked back into the woods. He came back then, carrying the bucket with fresh sap. He knelt in front of Aalliyah once again and removed the cloth. He sighed relief to see the bleeding had slowed down. Slowly he poured the maple sap over her forearm. Using his fingers, he spread it around and made sure it was really on thick. "How does this help?" she asked curiously. "What does the maple syrup do?" "It's going to protect your arm and help extract the venom," he explained. "I need you to hold your arm perfectly still for this next part, or it could end badly. Please do not be frightened by this." He reached in his pocket and pulled out a book of matches. He struck one and moved it closer to her arm. At once she flinched and tugged her arm towards her chest. "Aalliyah, you need to hold still." He took her hand with his free hand to keep her arm steady. His grip tightened, and she was shaking. "Trust me on this. I'm not going to burn you, I promise." In another second, he set the flame on top of the sap. It spread quickly down her forearm and burned. "You can't feel it, right?" "No, I can't," she assured, relaxing her shoulders. "How?" "The sap is acting as a shield on your skin. The flame will burn the venom out of you as it burns the sap. The second you start feeling heat on your skin, you need to tell me, because that means the fire will almost have burned through the sap. I'll put it out before it burns you." Seeing that she was calm and able to keep her arm from flinching, Jeramie released her hand. For 2 minutes he let it burn, then he poured water over the blaze. He took a wet cloth and washed away the rest of the sap on her arm. Most of the black marks from the venom trail had vanished and only remained by the spot the adder had struck her. Jeramie reached in his bag and pulled out an aloe leaf. He squeezed some onto the open cut. Then he took another herb from the satchel and split the leaf in half. He wrung it onto the same spot, letting its natural oils fall. Lastly, he took a large Band-Aid and placed it over the mark. "I'll change it for you in the morning," he informed. "You can stay here and rest, but I'm going to retrieve the firewood we abandoned in the woods." A bit later, Jeramie came back carrying an armful of wood. He set it down several feet away from the fire ring that Nate had built. Nate then took over the next part, building the fire. As he constructed the logs, he pointed out to Aalliyah why he was doing it the way he was. He made sure to show her how he left gaps between the logs so it could breathe and truly light. He explained the significance of having the kindle twigs between each of the logs and how it worked to help start the blaze. Soon he had the fire going, and Jeramie dug out the metal rods. He passed one to each of his friends, and then the three of them roasted hot dogs over the fire. For dessert, of course, it had to be s'mores. Nate was practically bouncing in excitement, knowing Aalliyah had never experienced it in her life. He showed her how to make one, and then handed her a marshmallow on a stick. She placed it in the fire and then realized she had set the white fluff ablaze. At once she pulled it from the pit and blew it out. However, it was torched and covered in a crusty layer of burnt black. Nate chuckled as he helped her put it onto the crackers. Then he and Jeramie waited in anticipation as she took her first bite. Her eyes lit up and she ate it so fast. She grabbed another marshmallow and made another. It was just so good she couldn't stop making them. The first one had tasted so wonderful with the burnt flavoring, so she purposely did that with the others. After a while, she set down her stick and yawned. Jeramie knew she was worn out and so tired because of the after effects of the adder venom. Nate agreed they should get to bed and poured a bucket of water over the fire. He sat there for a few minutes, making sure every kindle was out. The three of them went inside the tent and zipped it closed. Aalliyah lied down in her new sleeping bag on the thin cushion under it. It was very different than the feeling of a comfortable bed. Then Nate wrapped his arm around her, and she rested her head on his shoulder. Suddenly, she became comfortable, and her eyes slipped closed. Throughout the night, she tossed and turned, though, as she wasn't used to sleeping on such a hard surface. Plus, every time Nate or Jeramie moved, she heard the swooshing of their sleeping bags and the zippers rattling. Saturday, April 16th, finally came, though, and Aalliyah opened her eyes, and she heard Nate shuffle. He sat up and kissed her cheek. "Good morning, darling. How'd you sleep?" he inquired. "Not well, honestly," she reported. "The first night in a tent is usually the hardest. After that, your body is more adjusted to it. At least tonight is the last night you'll need to sleep in it, too, and then you can be back in the comfort of your own bed. But first, we have a grand adventure planned for today." Aalliyah and Nate stepped out of the tent and saw Jeramie reading a book. He heard the zipper and smiled as he closed the book. He gestured for Aalliyah to come over, and then he tore the Band-Aid from her arm. "It looks a lot better," he remarked. "I still am going to keep it covered today to prevent anything on the breeze blowing into it and causing an infection. Tonight you'll be able to take it off and let it heal in the night." "Thank you." He nodded as a reply and added a dash of aloe to her cut and placed a Band-Aid over top. Shortly, the three friends headed off hiking on the trails in the woods. The paths were carefully marked. Plus, Jeramie had a map of the trail, so there was no way they could get lost. They wove through the trees, going this way and that way. Aalliyah noticed the sound of running water getting louder and louder. No longer was it a distant stream, but a river running alongside of them. Soon the trees parted and revealed a glowing waterfall. Aalliyah paused as she gazed at its beauty. Jeramie stated, "Nate is always telling you about legends of the night sky. Well, now it's my turn. This waterfall is said to have magical properties. Some believe it can heal. Others believe it can show you a glimpse of your future in some metaphor. Some say it doesn't show the future, but rather the past, either yours or some long-ago mystery that circles your mind. The The waterfall knows what is needed, and that's how it decides whether to show an individual something or heal them. That's interesting, Aalliyah commented. Do you believe the legend, Nate? He grinned and responded, If I didn't, how could I believe any I hear of the stars? How does it work? Jeramie answered, By standing under its billow. Come, let us all go under it. I must warn you, the water may be a bit crisp, but it will be very refreshing. We will walk slowly to avoid slipping on any of the slippery rocks. They set their backpacks down and kicked their shoes off. Then Aalliyah rejoined, holding Nate's hand. Jeramie held out his, and she took it with her free hand. As a chain, the three began climbing across the rocks, making their way closer to the waterfall. They stepped into the cool water that came to their knees, and then got on the rock that was placed below the cascade. All together, they sucked in a deep breath and went under it. The water poured down over Aalliyah, and she saw herself near a rush of water. She was pulled in and being pulled down. She couldn't swim no matter how hard she fought, and she felt like the closing feeling of her lungs as she knew, for a fact, she was drowning. Beside her was Nate, and he seemed to be holding on to her. Jeramie was there and caught Aalliyah's arm and forcefully pulled her up. Her fingers tightened around her friend's hands, and a second later she felt Nate's tug her arm, leading them out from under the water. Both Jeramie and Nate gazed at her with concern in their eyes. Aalliyah, what happened? Inquired Nate. I felt like I was drowning in the vision. I don't think it meant literally, though. I think it was symbolic for pain. Could it have been replaying how you felt when you got the phone call about your parents? Maybe, but it felt different. What did you experience? I'm not sure. I saw black that flowed in the wind like silk. It reminded me of a horse's mane, but I haven't a clue what it could possibly represent. Jeramie, what about you? His best friend chuckled. I saw a rare herb that I'm running low on the path to it, and it's not far from here. Of course you did, laughed Nate. The three walked back to land and now drenched retrieved their backpacks. Jeramie took the lead, weaving through the unmarked trails, and then stopped suddenly. Satisfied, he smiled, and the others followed his eyes. Sure enough, there was the herb as the waterfall had showed him. Carefully, he pulled a few leaves off of it, knowing it wouldn't harm the plant, and added it to his bag. He led his friends back to the waterfall then, so they could resume following the trail. On they walked, seeing other waterfalls on the trail. Aalliyah, of course, had to ask if they had magic powers too, but Jeramie informed her only that one did. It was beautiful seeing the lovely nature, and it was a perfect day for it too. The temperature wasn't too hot or too cold. It was cold for a bit as they walked when they were soaking wet, but they dried in the sunbeams weaving between the trees, and they warmed up. Eventually, they paused on the trail and sat on a few large rocks to eat their lunch. Then they resumed the trails for a few more hours. They started climbing up a hill, and then finally at the top they stopped. Jeramie smirked, seeing the puzzled expression on Aalliyah's face. Look down, he said, and she did. There was the camp. She had no idea how they ended up on the opposite side from where they began, but that was because the waterfall trail was a loop, and the boys didn't tell her that. Back at the tent, Nate had Aalliyah help him start the fire. Then Jeramie dug out the grate to go over the fire from the trunk of the car. He took potatoes and wrapped each one in tinfoil. He set them on the edge of the grate instead of directly over the flame. He explained it would have to sit for a while for the potatoes to fully cook through. When they finally were steaming, he carefully split them open and sprinkled them in herbal spices. His two friends ate the potatoes rather quickly because it was so good. Aalliyah loved how well Jeramie cooked and how he always knew exactly what to add to it. As Nate had predicted, Aalliyah did sleep better that night, but it also helped she was just that tired and was out that easily. The next morning, the three packed up and set off for home. Aalliyah very much enjoyed her first camping experience, and she was grateful she got to spend it with two wonderful friends.